The one thing that Larian has done in an incredibly adept fashion is masking actual spoilers from the public, i.e. hiding the truth behind the Absolute, which is, in a sense, fascinating. They've managed to reveal seemingly major antagonists, and perhaps even important villains, but despite this, we are still ultimately sitting in the dark, left guessing as to what is actually going on in Baldur's Gate 3 in terms of the plot. We are ultimately still fairly clueless, whatever tales we spin and theories we weave, but it is nonetheless fun to come up with these theories, and for some of these theories, we have more evidence than for others. And at this stage, it seems as clear as day to me as to who the so-called chosen of the Absolute are, save for one that will almost certainly be revealed to us next month. And speaking of theories, I wish to correct, or at least offer a more plausible theory concerning Gortash than my previous one. As fond as I am of the theory of Gargoth's involvement in the politics of Baldur's Gate, and Lord Enver Gortash worshipping him and serving him, I have to, when confronted with counter-evidence, concede that that theory is probably wrong. I really wish it were true. And I think theory crafting is always fun, but in recent days, after intense study of the evidence, I must in fact concede that Gortash is probably no servant of Gargoth at all, and almost certainly a servant of Bane, and by extension, to some degree, the Absolute. Not only this, but I believe we now have a much clearer picture of the chosen of the Absolute, and based on evidence, Gortash is in fact one of them, as is Ketheric Thorm, and there is one final antagonist that is yet to be revealed. 3 primary antagonists, one for each of the dead 3, respectively, Gortash for Bane, Thorm for Myrkul, and a woman called Orin for Baal. The seemingly undeniable evidence for this started with Ketheric Thorm, and a more detailed scene of the chosen of the Absolute upon the bridge just before entering the Goblin Camp in Chapter 1. The PC and companions are forced unto the ground by the irresistible power of the Absolute's voice, and only the infernal box of Githyanki origin allows them to shrug off the psychic assault. Although these figures in the scene are almost certainly placeholders, they reveal enough to us so as to deliver a near certainty of who is who. Despite the facial features not matching what we know of Ketheric Thorm, we can clearly see that the central figure is Ketheric Thorm, and that the figure on the left is Enver Gortash. The faces are not perfect matches, but their attire is spot on, and on the right we have the as yet unrevealed female antagonist. I fully believe that the final antagonist will be revealed in the not-too-distant future, perhaps even next month, to close the circle of the chosen of the Absolute, and she will almost certainly represent Baal. Returning to the 2 other antagonists, though, we see that Ketheric's armor is a 1-to-1 match with the armor we have seen in the trailers with him. And looking at it again, given that we virtually know that each of the antagonists represents one of the dead 3, Thorm almost certainly represents Myrkul. His armor is adorned with skulls and symbols of death, things that are most readily associated with Myrkul the Necromancer. The undead hound at his side is further proof of this. This all screams necromancy, which is Myrkul's craft. The real question remains as to why Ketheric might be serving Myrkul. In a verbal confrontation with Gortash, stating that he does not answer to him, Thorm states that he has played his part in the service of other gods and other powers. Ketheric used to worship Selûne, but lost his faith in her after his daughter died, so he turned to Shar. But eventually, apparently had a falling out with the Church of Shar, the details of which are not known. And now, he seemingly serves and/or represents Myrkul. Setting aside pragmatic reasons, the ideological reason he might be drawn to Myrkul's worship is his recognition and acknowledgement of the power of death and the undead. Selûne in his eyes failed him, and Shar, in nurturing his bitterness and resentment, could not really help him either. And so what remains when neither light nor darkness help? The dead are always present, eternal, and in this manner, always reliable. Perhaps Ketheric has come to this way of thinking because of his disappointment with 2 goddesses that promised great things, but inevitably failed to deliver, whether light or dark. And why do we pretty much know that Gortash represents Bane? Recall the Magic the Gathering card, called simply Bane, and the gauntlet he is wearing, that bears a striking resemblance to the one that Gortash is wearing. and that it is Gortash standing to the left of Ketheric is impossible to deny. Bane has always been represented by some sort of gauntlet, though over the centuries this has varied quite a bit in form. But the outlined figure, his style of robe, and even the jewelry are identical to what we've seen in his introduction trailer. Equally convincing is the rather obvious fact that he speaks and acts as a tyrant, i.e. a protege of Bane, the god of tyranny. The entire trailer depicts him taking over the city of Baldur's Gate and reveling in it, including delusions of grandeur and promises of glory, by which he means his glory. Whilst Gargoth might be the consummate deity for the evil politician, Bane is not that far away, as the ultimate tyrant. And if Gortash was raised or lived in servitude to a devil, then it could have just as easily been Bane who helped free him. Of all the dead three, Bane has always been closest to the Nine Hells, dwelling on the war-torn plane of organized strife called Archeron, and his priesthood has had many dealings with devils as well. The last figure to the right, we are told, is a pale woman with even paler eyes, although to date we have no real information on her, and obviously there's been no trailer thus far. It is a near certainty that one will be released for her as well, probably in July, i.e. next month. By process of elimination, however, we know she represents Baal. Data mined information gathered by the esteemed Lord Chublot suggests that her name is Orin, and that she possesses great martial skill and agility, but beyond that we know next to nothing about her. However, what we do know is each figure stands for each of the dead three, with her being the last. Orin stands for Baal. Unfortunately, the weight of this evidence really refutes my previous theory, which, to be honest, I wish were true, but now I think it unlikely. There's not a tremendous amount we can say about these figures that has not been already said. We easily know the most about Ketheric given his indirect presence in Chapter 1, in books and in gossip, and even the soliloquy he gives you in his trailer. And for Gortash we know less about, as in what originally motivated him to become the man he is today, other than the claim that he was in bondage and raised by a devil, a claim we still don't really understand, and has apparently been appointed ruler or protector of Baldur's Gate. The representative of Baal, apparently called Orin, we know literally nothing about, and Gortash is some kind of arcane magic user. It would not surprise me at all, and indeed would make sense, if Orin turned out to be a rogue and assassin, very much befitting someone associated with the god of murder. There is, however, something interesting concerning all of this that we can in fact derive from the interactions we have seen, and that is, whatever their ultimate relationship, the three figures most closely associated with the Absolute don't necessarily get along, as indicated by Ketheric Thorm rebuffing Enver Gortash when Gortash attempts to order him about. And of course, even the dead three have had their friction both in life and after ascending to godhood, and in many ways they are just as much rivals as they are allies. They are, fundamentally, at the end of the day, very evil deities. Something that I think one could also argue for the representatives, who probably all have very different motivations for doing what they're doing, and are only held together in alliance to each other by the rather loose thread of the Absolute's authority. Recall what Gortash himself says: "A brittle alliance can never be mended, it can only break." And one final point to be made: I don't think it is a mere coincidence that the final antagonist, and last one to be revealed, is the one most associated with Baal. As most of you know, Baal played a most significant role in the original Baldur's Gate games, and it would not be unreasonable to think that he might do so again. Of all the dead three, Baal has the closest ties to the city of Baldur's Gate. But before going, I'd like to let you know that I have created a Discord server for my subs to join to discuss all matters Baldur's Gate RPG and related things, so I hope to see you there. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it really helps out my channel, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.